Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol standing by for us. So thank you very much for your time. Let's start then with your view on prices for oil, or at least where you see the demand picture heading in the months ahead through this year. Is the demand picture starting and continuing to soften? Where do you see prices by year end, sir?
So this year, 2024, we expect oil demand growth to be significantly weaker than last year, 2023. The increase, we expect about 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day, mainly as a result of the slowing down of the economic growth, China, but elsewhere, and also electrification of the transportation system, more electric cars coming in the picture. This is on the demand side. On the supply side, the growth coming from Americas, namely US, Canada, Brazil, and Guyana, this growth put all together is more than enough to meet the global oil demand growth. So in the absence of major geopolitical turmoil or major extreme weather events, we would expect rather a comfortable oil market and comfortable moderate price evolution throughout 2024.
Okay, moderate price evolution throughout 2024 because that supply is there, as you say, from the Americas, but demand is going to be softer. And of course, you make that key caveat around geopolitical risks. Does that give us some comfort when it comes to the question of inflation, Fatih? Do you think that we are past the big concern, at least around the resurgence of inflation when it comes to the energy component and the energy mix in that inflation story?
Yeah. So, at least what I can say, if there are no geopolitical escalation in Middle East, we are seeing a tension growing and then again reducing. And if we don't see any extreme weather events in North America and elsewhere, I would say that the oil prices remain at around current levels would help the inflation not to further increase. So as such, would be a good news for the global economy, especially in the emerging countries.
Fatih, it's Kriti Gupta in London. OPEC Plus has time and time again talked about physical tightness in this oil market, and it's that physical tightness that helps them kind of regulate some of the oil prices to perhaps a lot of the consuming economies kind of demise, to be completely honest. Talk to us a little bit about whether the United States, that extra supply that you touted, distorts the oil picture. Are you concerned at all about oversupply from the U.S.?
No, I think the growth coming from United States is welcome for the oil markets because, as I said, the demand is weaker than last year, but still significant, 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day. And the U.S. bringing a significant amount of oil is a very good news for the consumers, for the global economy, for inflation, as well as coming from Canada, Brazil, and Guyana. The Americas altogether cover the global oil demand growth and put a downward pressure on the prices and reduce the room of maneuver for the countries who want to control the oil production and consequently the prices.
Is this a good time, though, for that to actually happen in the context of some of the tensions we're seeing in the Red Sea? Several oil tankers being hit in that part of the world, in addition to longer fuel times, more labor. Fatih, when do the Red Sea tensions show up more aggressively in the oil price?
I think currently, when we look at the picture in the Middle East, we don't see any of the major producing countries are affected from those tensions, and the transition routes becoming longer. They may have some marginal effect on the prices. My worry is if we see one or more than one major oil producing countries is directly involved in the current crisis, and if we see escalation of the issue, the situation, this may well definitely push the prices up. And this will be definitely not good news for the global economy.
And certainly that is a risk, no doubt, that OPEC Plus are factoring in. They have their cuts coming through till the end of March. Are you seeing compliance with those OPEC Plus cuts in terms of the output, Fatih? And do you expect OPEC Plus, that cartel, to push out those cuts further into the year?
So I think by and large, there is a good discipline there when we look at the numbers, and what they are going to decide for the next steps is, of course, up to those countries. But as we discussed a few minutes ago, the inflation is a major risk for the global economy, and I think we all need to avoid to take steps which would fuel the inflation, including the higher energy prices, higher oil prices than we have now.
What is the demand picture looking like out of China at this point?
Chinese demand is weakening compared to last year for two reasons. One, the Chinese economy is slower compared to last year, and the second, the electrification of the transportation sector. As we speak now, every second car sold in China is an electric car. So therefore, in addition to the slowing down of the economy, demand is getting weaker because of the transportation sector electrifications continuing, and it will continue in China and also beyond.
Fatih, a big question around one of the calls that the IEA has made in the past, which is that oil demand will actually decrease by 2030 in response to some of the clean energy initiatives around the world. Well, since then, you have seen several governments around the world pull back on some of those clean energy initiatives simply because they are touted as being too expensive. President Trump itself has been talking about creating more and more growth in the oil sectors within the U.S., which of course creates a lot of the GDP there. Talk to us about how the IEA is thinking about the effects of a Trump presidency.
Yeah. So first of all, we said you are right. Global oil demand would peak before 2030. It will not stop or go down from overnight to zero, but peak before 2030 for two reasons. One, the clean energy is moving faster than many people realize. Just last year, 2023, more than 80% of all new power plants built in the world were renewables. About 5% nuclear power, only the rest fossil fuels. This is nothing to do with the climate policy, it's more because of they're cheaper. Second, electric cars, they are booming across the world. For nuclear power, we see a major comeback. They will weaken the global oil demand growth. And plus, I think we should see what is happening in China. In the last 10 years, more than 2/3 of the global oil demand growth came from China only. And Chinese economy increased more than 6% per year. And Chinese economy is slowing down, and therefore it is demand. So putting these things together, slower Chinese economy, which is the single most important driver of oil demand growth, and the clean energy transition around the world, we think we are going to see before 2030 a peak of oil demand. And we are not the only one. After we said it, several companies, oil and gas companies in Europe, repeated the same thing.
Okay, so you still see that peak in terms of oil demand before 2030. When it comes to the transition story then, briefly, before we let you go, yes, some oil companies here in Europe are investing around that transition, but frankly it's pretty marginal, and their US counterparts are barely doing anything at all. What would you like to see in terms of the policy prescription to encourage those oil majors to do more to fund that transition?
So many oil and gas companies, their leaders in Europe, United States, and even Middle East and elsewhere, they are saying their companies are, on one hand, continue with their traditional operations, but for them, climate change, clean energy is very important. And when you look at their speeches, statements, strategic documents, big chunk of it is dedicated to their efforts they are claiming they are doing on clean energy. But at the IEA, we look at the numbers. When we look at the numbers, 2023, only 2.5% of the investment, the oil and gas industry goes to clean energy, 97.5% the fossil fuels. What I wish from them, that there is at least a similarity in how much they dedicate their speech to clean energy and their investment portfolios.